Everybody. Welcome to Cosi Talks. All right, it feels a little lonely in the studio. I've had some really amazing guests the past couple of weeks, and now I've got the whole screen to myself. And I don't know if I like that. I like having company here in the studio. All right, I'm going to give you all a chance to jump in and join in on the show. If you are watching the replay, please put into the comments section replay. It allows me to see, just kind of track to see who's watching and where they're coming from. And also, if you have any questions, those of you watching the replay, I can get a chance to pick up those questions and answer them for you. All right, guys, we've got a good show going on tonight. Lots of questions that came in because the past 2 weeks were a specialized talk on the show. So I've been storing up all my viewer questions for the past couple of weeks for you guys here. Hey, Harsh, glad you could join in. Hey, Ashley, you got your sweet tea tonight? Girl, I don't know about you in Tennessee, but I know here in Florida, we're still in the 90-degree, humid as Hades weather. So cheers to you, Ashley. I've got water, which I'm breaking the Cosi Talks rule and bringing water on the show, but that's just how bloody hot it is here in this place right now. All right, guys, don't be shy. Let me know who you are, where you're from, what's in your glass or mug. I've got my Cosi Talks glass over here. I've had some of these flying off the shelves in the Cosi Talks mugs, so I'm kind of excited to see that. And some of y'all have been sending me pictures with your Cosi Talks merch, as my kids would call it. So I'm really excited about that. Hey, oh my, it's Mark S. Hey, Bonnie, how are you? Thank you so much for sending me that update. Hey, Alex, glad you could join us. What's happening, Kenny? We got Jeffrey Cook, man. Jeffrey, I'm going to be singing your praises tonight, so stick around, man. Stick around. Ashley says they're having a lot of rain, about hit fall-like weather. Hey, Johnny V from Poughkeepsie, New York is in the Cosi Talks house. Johnny, I'm so glad to see you, man. You always bring a smile to my face. Tom, thank you so much for coming, Tom. I really appreciate it, man. I tell you what, Tom, the day we meet, I am holding you to it. We are going to go for a run, right? And you are going to give me a run for my money, because I'll tell you what, my mile pace lately, no bueno. No bueno. Hey, Jody, it's Slim from Vegas. Hot and got water myself. Awesome, Jody. Have you started your teaching job yet? And how's that going? All right, guys, I'm going to give you guys another few seconds here. David with the ice cream. Oh, that's a good one. Did Bob get a large friend? Yes. So here, wait, there's my other Bob. So, long story short, when I started having problems with the original Bob, meaning my kids started picking him apart, some of you all sent me extra Bobs, which is wonderful. I have a beautiful collection here of Bobs sent to me from my viewers. We've got miniature Bob here. We've got, miniature Bob just ate the dust. We got the my favorite one here to use. This one's my favorite one. And then we've got the full-length Bob. And last but not least, somebody actually sent me from Canada a little pet for Bob. And his name is Fred. We decided to name him Fred. So there you have it. There you have it. Those of you who are new to the show wondering why I have all these skeletons surrounding. Oh, and there's this one. Sorry, almost forgot this one. This one came from Mark. So there we go. There you have it. Hey, Sandra, lead it, Mama. Glad you could make it, girl. Molly. Oh, Molly, thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you. We got Cindy on board. Mary Ann. Excellent. You haven't gotten, okay, you're going to have that cup there. You're going to have that cup there very soon, Marianne. It's getting shipped out tomorrow, actually. Thank you for reminding me to tell you that. Standing for 2 hours and 10 minutes while teaching without a problem. That's a success. That's a big win right there, Jody. Hey, Trent, glad you could join. Adam, what's going on, man? Oh, glad you could join in, buddy. All right, guys, so we've got lots of great questions on board. A lot of questions from my bilateral amputees. So it's kind of cool. I don't often get to, branch out with bilateral questions and answers, but it's very applicable. All the stuff that we're going to talk about for our bilateral, trust me, it's very applicable for my unilateral amputee folks. Hey, Doug, what's going down 12 pounds? What is your secret, Doug? What is your secret? Let me know. So guys, I got to do a little bragging here because today in the mail, I got my new issue of Amplitude Magazine. If you guys have been watching the show the past couple of weeks, I had Larry Borowski, the editor of Amplitude Magazine, on the show. And we did this wonderful 2-week special on the Paralympics. And I opened up this magazine. I haven't read the full thing yet. That's my treat with my morning coffee tomorrow. And lo and behold, who do I see here but Mr. Brian Bishop? Mr. Brian Bishop is one of my viewers that I see every week, and I am so excited to see this article about him and climbing the lighthouse. So I'm really looking forward to getting into the details of this, but congratulations, Brian. This is really, 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 really cool. So guys, if you haven't already, it's a free publication, guys, and it's a really beautiful publication. There's a lot of good editorial. There's a lot of good, just bread and butter knowledge. And I've worked with some of their writers before, excellent writers, guys, wonderful stories that they put in here. So I would encourage you to go to the Amplitude website, and the website itself is a real joy to go through as well, especially for the Paralympics. Really great stuff. So I would encourage you to go and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Howdy, Charles. Haven't seen you in a while. Oh, Charles, I am so sorry to hear that. I am so sorry to hear that. I'm glad you could join us this evening. I'm sorry for your loss. Pat, glad you could join us here this evening. Hey, Glenda, watching me from the YouTube channel. So guys, I am broadcasting to my YouTube channel as well. So for those of you who are interested in sharing this out with some of your support group friends who may not be on Facebook, they can catch me on my YouTube channel. All right, let's get started. This first one's an easy one. We've covered this topic a couple of times several times on the show, but I always like to kind of revisit it for my new folks and also just to hear what new hacks you guys can teach me. So this one came from Glenda. Glenda says, I'm a below the knee amputee flying for the first time since my amputation. Any tips would be helpful. I have not flown since 2007. And oh boy, have things changed since 2007? Have things changed since just 2019 with flying? So my baseline recommendation, guys, is planning. Planning ahead. And I know that sounds like master of the obvious, but it devil's in the details with the planning. Number one, decide what is your current functional mobility level and be honest with yourself. Okay. If you cannot walk a full city block, okay, on your own while carrying a backpack carry-on, chances are you're not going to be able to do that in the connecting flight in an airport, in a busy airport with people bonking into you. So it'd be a good idea to arrange with the airlines ahead of time to have the wheelchair transport where they meet you at the gate, they whisk you off to the next gate to your connecting flight. What's also really nice about that, and I've heard this from some of my viewers in their post comments, is that because of all the wackiness going on right now with flights getting canceled, flights getting delayed, people missing their connections, if you're being transported with wheelchair transport and you're running late for that connection, they'll call ahead and hold that plane for you. So that's kind of a nice little perk about that. So arranging for the wheelchair transport, okay? As for getting through security, that's another big one that some of my viewers sometimes will struggle with. Call ahead of time. Call ahead of time. You can do two things. You can call the TSA, go on the website and just see what are the recommendations, what are the requirements for someone who is wearing a prosthesis. Do they require you to take the leg on or off? A lot of the people I hear, they're able to keep their leg on and they're just pulled over to one side where they just do a little bit of extra screening, right? The equipment that you bring with you, that's another one, especially those of you who might be traveling with more than one leg and you don't want to check that leg in because, they're expensive, right? So find out ahead of time, what is your airline's requirements in order for you to bring that leg on with you as a carry-on. That shouldn't be a problem. Let me just tell you, that should not be a problem, okay? Because just as a, for example, I travel a lot with my violin and that certainly cannot go get checked in and they allow me to carry my violin. So if they can allow me to carry a violin, they can allow you to carry the prosthetic leg that you need to walk, right? Okay. So that's the big thing right there, is just finding out what's going to happen when you get to security. Okay. That being said, right, if they have to examine your leg, it'd be a good idea to kind of plan what you're wearing. Okay. Nowadays we have pants that have zippers in them. For example, the Unitable company, right? So it allows for easy access to the prosthesis in case the person needs to scan that leg. Okay. Or wearing shorts. Okay. Chances are you will not have to take off your shoes. You will probably be able to keep your shoes on. So that's kind of a bonus right there. Okay. The other thing to think about, your limb volume change, right? I know that when I go on an airplane, my ankles just blow up. Right. And I got to put on my compression stockings when I get to wherever it is I'm going. I know, super sexy. So with your residual limb, guys, that can happen as well. Your residual limb will change in volume as you go up and down in these airplanes. Some people are lucky. They get on the plane, their limb stays the same and off they go. But if this is one of your first couple of times getting on an airplane and you don't know how your limb is going to react, okay, bring your shrinker with you. Okay. So some people I know, they like to take their leg off during the flight because they get a little more room, right? So I encourage them to put the shrinker on just to make sure you don't get any kind of rebound inflammation, okay? One of my other buddies, Reggie Showers, actually gave me this tip. When he gets on a plane, he will take his legs off, take off a sock or two, and then put his legs back on. And that's to kind of accommodate the swelling he anticipates getting. right? So that's another way to do it. And then finally, when you get to the hotel, right, or wherever it is that you're staying after your flight, put the shrinker on at night, okay? Because sometimes that inflammation can happen hours after you get off the plane and boop, you get a little bit more swelling, okay? So have that shrinker ready and available so that you can put it on. Even if you haven't had to wear a shrinker, just bring it with you. The other thing to think about, I'm kind of throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you guys for this one, travel devices. And what I mean by travel devices, crutches, walker, okay? Think about where it is you will be staying, okay? Will they have an accessible bathroom for you, accessible showering? Okay. Are you going to need crutches to get into and out of the shower? You know, occasionally I've had one or two amputees stay over in my home, and I always have to make sure that I remember to bring my crutches from my clinic and bring my shower bench so that they can use my shower safely. But you may not have that available to you wherever it is you're going. So those are just a couple of things just to kind of make a checklist about as you take these trips. And I want to see what you guys have been saying, because I see comments flying in. I want to see what you guys have to say. Hey, Tisha, glad you can make it. Glenda's in Disneyland. Oh, nice. Glenda, what's your favorite ride in Disneyland? I want to know. Mark is flying tomorrow, too, to meet his grand. Oh, that's a sweet moment right there. Jody says, buy a bicycle Allen wrench to have with you when you travel. That's a good idea. Denise says, get the wheelchair in order to make connecting flights. Get to security early because you won't have to take off your shoes, and they do additional checks, right? So guys, usually just planning way ahead of time and just getting there super early usually takes the stress off. Sean says, yep, that's our cheat as an amputee. It gets you through the TSA easily in a wheelchair. Denise says they are not required to take the leg off. Sean says that he was asked to take the leg off once, but not again. And again, guys, every airport is just a little bit different. So, you know, I think if you just don't assume and you just kind of just go in there knowing what is or is not going to happen, it helps out a lot with the stress. Let's see. Marianne says, last time I flew, they lost my wheelchair for 6 months, and that's not good. That's not good, guys. And definitely, and that's something I don't know too much about myself in terms of how can you protect your equipment to make sure that things aren't lost. I myself would not travel with when I had my 4 kids were small, I wouldn't travel with my stroller. I had them in the sling because I knew that parents would lose their strollers all the time through the airports. So I'm interested to see how we can help with that. Doug says, rule number 1 for flying, do not take off the prosthesis mid-flight because the cabin is pressurized at 35,000 feet. When you land, you may not be able to put your prosthesis on again for a while. And this has happened to a couple of my patients where they took their leg off, and when they landed, they realized they couldn't get their leg back on. Luckily, they had their crutches with them so that they could walk off the plane. So again, this is where you just got to kind of think ahead. If you anticipate taking your leg off in the middle of the flight, or you're not sure how your leg's going to react, have those crutches, have that walker with you just in case you have to exit the plane on one leg and an assistive device, right? All right, Glenn says, I used the wheelchair and TSA screening was a breeze and I flew on a Sunday. That's actually not a bad idea to think about. Hey, Karen, glad you could join us. Let's see. Cindy says, I don't wear my prosthesis. I go through in the wheelchair and they use the wand all over. Jody says, I'm flying to West Palm, bringing my swim leg, not checking it, don't want to lose it. I don't blame you there, guys. I don't blame you there. I would not trust, like I said, I wouldn't trust checking my violin. So certainly not a prosthetic leg. Cindy, your shrinker is something that your prosthetist will be ordering for you. That's a medical device, piece of medical equipment. So your prosthetist needs to get a prescription from the doctor, and then they can issue you a shrinker. Okay. Oh, thank you, Johnny. That's very helpful. Johnny just posted up a link for the TSA checkpoint, courtesy of the Amputee Coalition. So thank you for that. I'm gonna have to check that out later and just see if I missed anything. Let's see. Jeff says, I wear my stubbies onto the plane, usually because I have to take one off because 2 sockets won't fit into a lot of the seats. 4 out of 5 times first class is comfortable. So that's a good one there for my bilateral amputees. Hey, Jennifer, glad you could make it. Okay. Whew, you guys are great with the comments. I love these comments, guys. Keep them coming. All right, here we go. We've got Trying to figure out where to start because these questions are really great questions. Okay, so Kelly. Kelly is a lovely physical therapist who's been watching the show. And I got a chance to speak with Kelly regarding one of her bilateral patients. And guys, let me just take a footnote here. I would say about 80% of my viewers right now are actual amputees, right? Someone who's experienced a limb loss. But about 20% of my viewers consist of physical therapists, prosthetists, and family caregivers of amputees. And the reason why I mentioned this is because this show is for everybody, right? Primarily it's for my amputees watching the show, but it's also for my PTs and my prosthetists. And I've had several PTs and prosthetists in the past almost 3 years that I've been doing this show call me from different parts of the United States and even from outside the United States to ask questions. And I welcome these questions, guys. Those of you who are clinicians out there, I worked very hard, to learn, and everything I did to learn everything I know working with my patients, but I could not have done it without the mentors that I had along the way, the people who would stop and take my phone calls, or people who would come and work with me with a patient to help teach me. So this is my chance to also give back to the amputee community, but also give back to the clinicians who are out there trying to treat this population. So don't be shy, is I guess what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, so back to the question. Kelly says, I do have a question about floor transfers. I've searched the internet for a video of bilateral above the knee amputee with Stubbies on performing floor transfer, but I can't find one. Do you have one? Any advice on how to accomplish this task? So one of my favorite people to recommend is Trevor Bunch. He's a bilateral above the knee amputee. He calls himself a congenital amputee because he had his legs removed at a very early age, I think before he was a year old, I think. So for all intents and purposes, a congenital amputee. And the guy is a beast. He is amazing. He is a personal trainer, and he just flies on his prosthetic devices. And he posts a lot of really great videos on how he does his workouts with Stubbies and also with full length legs, and also doing transfers. Now, granted, Trevor is a very young man, very, very buff, very strong. So he can fly around pretty easily because of all of his hard work with staying in shape. But usually when my bilateral amputees come to me, they're not doing really great in terms of their health and their endurance and their fitness. So we have to kind of approach it a little differently. When it comes to doing floor to chair transfers, I usually do a graded approach. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll put like a 2-inch step on the floor or on the mat that we're working on. And I'll have the amputee practice pushing themselves up and onto that 2-inch step, and then also bringing themselves down. And it's a really great way to start building up that shoulder strength and that arm strength and that chest and the back strength that they need to be able to really hoist their weight up. And then once they can master doing that 2-inch step, okay, then we'll increase it to 3 inches and 4 inches. Not a terribly complicated technique, and it works. It takes time, obviously, to build that strength up to the point where they can reach up behind them on the wheelchair and really pull their entire body weight up. It takes time. Other ways is also if they approach it through the front. So instead of hoisting themselves up back, right, they might learn how to pull themselves up into the chair. So those are just 2 ways. The other part of the question is, do you have certain criteria you look at prior to initiating training for the full length legs? Meaning, with our bilateral amputees, especially our bilateral above the knee amputees, typically we will like to start using Stubbies. Okay, so guys, I don't know if you've seen what a stubby foot looks like. It's basically, it's a socket, and then there's like looks like a little goat's foot attached directly to the bottom of that socket. Okay, and so for my bilateral above the knee amputees, typically this is where they will start off, not necessarily in full length legs. And a lot of it is just to get the person accustomed to being upright, right, with their center of gravity closer to the floor, because it's a lot easier to keep your balance when you are, 4'5" versus 5'4", right, with full length legs. Okay, so a lot of training will take place. Now, the therapist was asking, what criteria do I use to graduate the person to full length legs? Okay, and it caught me by surprise. I was like, you know what? My criteria has changed a lot, in the past 18 years that I've been in practice, right? It used to be that I was very strict. Okay, the person has to have a certain amount of strength in their hip muscles, and they have to be able. But I was realizing, as the years would go by, I go more by how is the patient doing functionally? how are they maneuvering in those stubbies, and what is the final goal? So here's my approach. The whole approach is, number one, can I convince the prosthetist, and can the prosthetist convince the insurance company to make 2 sets of legs for my bilateral above the knee amputee? Meaning that the person will have 1 set of legs that's a set of stubbies, and that they will have a separate pair of legs with the full length leg. Now, I know that can be tricky because insurance may not want to pay for 2 sets of sockets, right? But it can be done. And here's the reason. With my bilateral above the knee amputees, right, a very, 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 very small percentage of those patients, their legs for an entire day, right? Think about it. They're using over 150% more energy to walk, more than that, well more than that, okay? So many of them will opt to either use crutches, or they will opt to use a wheelchair for part of their day's mobility. Some of them like to use their stubbies. So for example, we have some great, this is where I'm going to brag a little bit about Jeffrey Cook. Jeffrey is one of the admins to one of our support groups on Facebook, and he's posted several videos of maneuvering around his house. And not, when I say maneuvering, I mean he flies around his house with these stubbies. And in his case, and he's shared this on public pages. So basically, as he's waiting to get his full-length stubbies, or full-length legs, excuse me. Okay, so you see him mowing the lawn with the stubbies. You see him performing the household chores, getting around in the community on these stubbies. So the stubbies give him a great deal of mobility and freedom. Okay. So when it comes to graduating from the stubbies to the full-length leg, usually I like to see how far can they walk with their stubbies. Okay, because it's actually a lot harder than it looks, right? And it's going to be a bit of an awkward gait pattern. So as a, for example, I'll say if a person can walk about 150 feet, meaning they can pretty much get from their kitchen to their bedroom, right? I used to do a lot of home health, and they can do this without having someone help them, then that's when I'll say, okay, let's talk about putting the full length legs on. Okay, because if they can do 150 feet, right, and this is not any specific, I'm sure I can dig up some research and dig up numbers. This is just me practicing for 18 years and doing this for 18 plus years, guys. If a person can walk 150 feet with stubbies without the assistance of someone, meaning without the physical therapist having to hold on to them, that means that they have pretty darn good endurance, because that requires a lot of energy expenditure. It means that they're probably going to have at least a 4 out of 5 hip strength, muscle strength, okay? Because you've got to have a lot of strength to get yourself through this prosthesis, right? If I've been able to successfully get the prosthetist to make 2 sets of legs, then I'm going to switch back and forth. I'm going to do part of my treatments with the stubbies and part of my treatments with the full-length legs, so that we can gradually move them into the full-length legs, starting with weight shifting exercises, very basic, simple exercises, okay? So for me, it's not so much a hard line between, okay, now it's time to stop using stubbies and it's time to start using the full-length legs, okay? In my ideal scenario, okay, my patients will kind of overlap, okay? And they'll continue to use both sets of legs, and it'll just be determined by what is being worked on that day. Does that make sense? Jeffrey, if you want to chime in with this one, I'd love to hear what you have to say. So Rhonda, the stubbies, okay? The stubbies are just basically the socket and a foot underneath. And it's not a foot like this. And I wish I had a sample. You know what? I need to get College Park to send me one, because I love their Sidekick stubby foot, and I'm always talking about it. It looks like a little square foot. It looks like just a little square plate. That's a better word for it. A little square plate. And it goes right underneath the socket. There's no metal pylon, stick, whatever you want to call it. It's just the socket and a foot. Okay. Now, my particular favorite, and I like to plug this one because it's a really great foot, it is the College Park Sidekicks foot. And the reason is because their little stubby foot will actually move. It's a multi-axial foot. So it actually moves. It's not just a rigid foot stuck underneath there. And it's got a really nice tread on it to prevent slipping. It's a fantastic foot. Hey, Kevin, glad you could join us. All right, so guys, those of you who are bilaterals out there, I'd love to hear from you. You know, did you use stubbies? Typically, you use the stubbies if you're a bilateral above the knee. With the below the knee, bilateral below the knee, typically you go straight into the full-length legs. So I'm curious as to what you guys have to say, Jeffrey, especially. Now's your chance to chime in, Jeffrey. All right. Charles says, should the type of socket we wear make any difference as to how the pressure in flight affects our bodies? So flew from LAX to Honolulu, and there was a positive pressure socket causing me noticeable side effects. And I flew to in another flight wearing a vacuum socket and no drastic difference. That's actually a really great question, Charles. And the answer is yes. It's not necessarily the type of socket, it's the type of suspension, right? That's what you're referring to. So yes, if you have something like an elevated vacuum, right, you're probably going to do better on an airplane, because the whole point of that elevated vacuum is to create that pressure environment, that negative pressure environment within the socket itself, to keep the limb volume stable, right? No air pockets, so nothing's getting in there to affect it. So it wouldn't surprise me that you had a better outcome when you used an elevated vacuum socket. Okay, great question. Yes, Cindy, that's Jeffrey. I know I told Jeffrey I was going to be bragging about him tonight, so hopefully he's not going to be too shy. All right, we've got, let's see. Okay, here's another great question. Again, another one from my bilateral. Bonnie says, when I get shrunk, I will go into my stubbies. Yeah. And here's the thing, sometimes with the bilateral, and I know I had one patient where this was a bit difficult. It's a little tough sometimes when you have two sockets up, the above the knee sockets that reach up to the groin, and it really can make it a bit challenging to move the legs forward. So the patient ideally has to shrink down quite a bit in order for them to be able to get both sockets on, to accommodate both sockets while they're walking. All right, we have a question here from Michael. Michael says, I have a question about walking down declines or inclines as a bilateral below the knee amputee. These seem to be my toughest challenges when I walk outside. I can walk down them, right? However, it takes all of my concentration and strength. And I'm thinking, like everything else I face, is going to take time to overcome. What exercises have others used? And this is a question I kind of pulled off from one of the support groups, and I really loved it because I loved the responses that came after it. It made me so happy. Ask me why. Because all the responses were what people had been told by their physical therapists on how to handle this. So I was like, yay, people are listening to their PTs. That makes me happy. Okay, so guys, when it comes to, and this is not just exclusive to my bilateral amputee population. This is for my unilaterals, where you're below knee or an above the knee. Okay, learning to walk on uneven terrain, whether that's the sidewalk, whether it's grass, whether it's going up or down a ramp or an incline. Okay, these are skills that you need to learn how to do. They typically come on the tail end of your traditional physical therapy rehab protocol because they are more challenging. And a lot of it, what it really boils down to is practice, 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 right? Learning how to walk in those new feet, those new knees, and learning how to negotiate. A lot of times it's taking a big skill like walking down a ramp and just putting it into little bite-sized pieces. Okay, so my favorite way to teach someone how to walk down a ramp is literally to start them at the end of the ramp. Okay, so here, I'm going to make a ramp out of my Amputee magazine, right? So if the person, that's a really steep ramp. If the person's walking down the ramp, I'm not going to start them up here. Okay, that's way too much for their brain to process, right? I'm going to start them right here, right? And it's for two things. Number one, so that they can learn how to problem solve in a safe environment. And number two, so that their brain doesn't start to wig out about how to manage a ramp from all the way up here the first time. And also the PT doesn't wig out as much. So I'll just have them take one step down to negotiate that ramp. And as soon as they can negotiate that one step down, going back 2 steps and then slowly working their way back, okay? Typically by the time I start addressing ramps and uneven terrain, oh my God, you're all over the place. All right, by the time I start addressing uneven terrain with my patients, they've already achieved a certain level of strength and coordination and balance. It's not to say that they don't have more to learn, but there's already a baseline there to work with, okay? So if I'm getting them out in the grass, and I take them, guys, I take them out of my clinic into the parking lot, and I have a very busy parking lot next to my clinic, and there's like little grassy areas. I will take my patients everywhere, right? Typically, once I take them outside, it's because on inside the clinic, they've already been doing sidestepping exercises. They've already been practicing walking backwards. I have my people walking in and out of cones, doing a lot of different challenging activities on a level surface that will then transfer to walking on the uneven terrain. If you'll give me a moment. Please hold. Okay. So this is one of my favorite videos that's on my YouTube channel. And by the way, if you're not following me on my YouTube channel, please go subscribe. That's my ask for this evening. Please go subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram. So when I check my phone tonight, guys, I would love to see a few new followers on Instagram. Hint, hint. All right, so the video that I just posted, it's one of my favorite videos when it comes to doing balance exercise. And it's the braiding exercise. Some people in football call it doing suicides. In basketball, there's a different name for it, but basically it's where you're braiding your feet in and out, right? Marianne, your therapist does all that. You have a very wise therapist, Marianne. All right. So guys, there's a way to break this exercise down into its basic components, which is what I do in that particular video. Okay. But that's basically what, when it comes to negotiating ramps, whether you're a below the knee, above the knee, or bilateral. Okay. It's building these skills indoors on level surfaces, building these balance and coordination skills. And yes, your strength also comes in with it too. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse me. All right, so Jeff says, thank you, Jeff, for chiming in. Getting household chores done around the house is perfect in Stubbies, and many exercises and strengthening balance, etc. It's like a tool for such different situations, and that's exactly what's it, Jeff. I remember, Jeff, when you posted a video of using your lawnmower in your Stubbies, and I was just thinking, I was like, that's brilliant. It's brilliant. Number one, it's really unsafe to try to mow your lawn with 2 full-length legs. I can only think of one person in this world that can probably do that, and his name's Tom Allred. So, but that being aside, not only a safety factor, but what an amazing exercise. How much engagement of your core do you have to put in to get that lawnmower to push forward? It's a fantastic training tool, and that's exactly what Jeff just said, It's not just a transition tool to using these full-length legs. It's something that you can continue to use. And I've mentioned it on my show several times. The majority of my bilateral amputees are not using their legs from morning until night. Not because they didn't receive good therapy or not because they're not motivated and working hard, but because it's a lot of energy expenditure. So different parts of the day, they'll have different techniques for their mobility. So, in the house, they might choose to wear their Stubbies because they're just that efficient, much more efficient at moving around. Okay. When they go out into the community, they might use their long legs, but with their loft strand crutches. Okay. And just kind of different ways of doing things throughout the day. Yeah, Kevin, I've got my cat here. She's just decided that she wants to sit next to me right now, and there's nothing that can do that. Jeff says, with knees, it takes lots of practice from sit to stand and do what I call a dance. Lean a little to the right, then step with the left. Yeah. And when it comes to, and this is, I love working with bilateral amputees because it's, for me as a clinician, it's a good challenge. It's a wonderful challenge because everyone does it just a little bit differently. And you gotta problem solve and figure out what's going to work for them to get them moving. Okay. All right, let's go to the next question. Ooh, I'm telling you, it's bilateral night on the Cosi Talk Show tonight. So Marianne here says, I've already completed the Stubbies 2 mechanical knees, and that worked out pretty well for me. Now I want to know how much harder is it going to be for me to walk with C legs. I kind of want to know what to expect as a double above the knee amputee. So the good news is, Marianne, is that you've done the hard work. The hardest part is done. If you have gone from using Stubbies to using mechanical knees and you have mastered the use of mechanical knees, meaning you're getting around from point A to point B, you're not losing your balance, you're able to do it on your own, even if you're using crutches. Okay, when it comes time to graduate you to the microprocessor knees, especially the C leg, those are some nice looking knees, right? Okay, you're going to find it's a lot more efficient. Now, it's not to say, and those of you who've been listening, you're like, yep, we heard Cosi say this, that you're not going to have to learn how to use those microprocessor knees because they do work a little bit different compared to your mechanical knees, okay? But once you learn the technique, you're going to find that you're a lot more efficient. It's going to be a bit of a smoother gait. And hopefully, ideally, you're not going to have to put as much. It's not this energy into walking. It's not to say you're not going to still be tired by the end of your day of walking. but compared to using mechanical knee. So those are some of the basic advantages of using the microprocessor knee compared to the mechanical knee. Capiche? All right. Sorry, I'm like going through these questions. Okay. This one a viewer sent me this question, and I'm still trying to follow up with this particular viewer. She says, my mother-in-law lost her right leg above the knee in a car accident 20 years ago. She has a prosthesis and very independent. She's 74 and has the most severe pain that you can have in her stump. She had a revision last year, but it didn't work for the pain. She had major back surgery 3 weeks ago, and her back is great, but her stump pain is horrible. I honestly don't know how much more she can take. I'm desperately trying to find some help for her. I've seen a post about the TMR surgery and was wondering if that could help her. Okay, so TMR referring to the targeted muscle reinnervation surgery. And guys, I've done several shows on the TMR and the RPNI surgeries with Dr. Leonard Dedesi, an orthopedic surgeon who came on the show to help me talk about it. So the basic gist of the targeted muscle reinnervation is that it is a treatment for neuromas. Okay, so neuromas are when you have the amputation and the nerve gets cut, right? The nerve will get pushed back into that soft tissue, but it's still kind of just floating around, flopping around, right? It's not plugged into anything anymore. And that can create problems down the line with severe residual pain and also severe phantom pain, okay? So one of the surgical procedures that a doctor might do, and only certain surgeons have been trained on this, is they will take that neuroma, right? They'll cut out all the scar tissue that's around it, and then they'll take that nerve and plug it back into a muscle. So basically they're making that nerve happy by giving it a job to do, okay? It's a phenomenal procedure and it has phenomenal results, but only if you have a neuroma, okay? And this is something that I really like to drive this point home whenever I'm talking about residual limb pain versus phantom sensation, is being able to identify which one is which. And actually, speaking of that, I'm going to go ahead. It's going to be posting night for my YouTube channel. Give me a second.
If you want to eat.
All right. We're going to post this video. Here we go. Boom. Okay. That video right there, I explained the differences between phantom pain, phantom sensation, and residual limb pain. Okay. So in the case of this particular individual, she's having residual limb pain. There is something in that residual limb that is causing her pain. So some of the differentials that we might do, some of the things, the causes for it, is it coming from her back, right? Sometimes when we have problems with our back, like a herniated disc or a pinched nerve, as some people like to call it, also sometimes, or sciatic, problems with the sciatic pain, it will refer pain down into our legs or into the residual limb, okay? Other common problems that we'll see, neuromas, we talked about that, right? Bone spurs, okay? That's another big one that will cause residual limb pain, okay? So for this particular individual, it sounds like she's already had a revision and she had back surgery. So the back surgery, if the back surgery was a success, which it sounds like it was, okay, then the pain may not have been coming from the back. Okay, so with this particular individual, and I'm still waiting to hear a response, I was asking her to please describe to me the pain. Okay, there's a lot of different kinds of pain, right? I don't have to tell you guys that. You've got burning pain, stabbing pain, crushing pain, achy pain, shooting pain, and all the different differences between these pain can help us as clinicians determine where is it coming from and what is causing it. Okay, this individual can have her mother-in-law have TMR surgery. But if her mother-in-law's pain is not coming from a neuroma, then that TMR surgery is not going to do anything for her. And it's going to be, putting her under unnecessary anesthesia. Okay. So again, I don't have as much information as I would like on this particular individual, but it makes me ask questions like saying, well, what did the doctor tell your mother-in-law was the cause of her pain? Why did they do the revision? Is it because they saw that there was a bone spur in there and they had to carve it out and revise a couple of things? Or did they see that some of the muscle perhaps had detached and they had to reattach certain muscle insertions in the residual limb? What was it that they told her was causing the pain? Okay. And then going from there. And guys, there's some really effective treatments for some of these causes. But ultimately, you got to know what you're treating, right? You can't just throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. Okay. All right, guys, I think. Okay, so Cindy, the basic things, and again, this is something that when it comes to neuroma, a lot of it is symptoms, right? What do my patients, when I hear a patient talking about a certain kind of pain, it'll kind of get my attention and a little red flag will go up in my head. So usually when my patient has a neuroma or I suspect that they might have a neuroma, they'll tell me they can feel the pain and they can point to it. When I tell them point to the pain, right? If a person's having phantom pain, right, they're going to kind of do this motion. They're going to be like, yeah, it hurts here. And they're pointing to the air where their leg used to be, right? And they're just sitting there going, I know I'm pointing to the air, but that's where I'm feeling the pain. I go, yeah, I get it. That's how phantom pain works, right? In some cases with a neuroma, they're able to point directly to the point on their limb. And a lot of times that neuroma gets fired up when they put their prosthesis on because there's something in that prosthesis that's poking right into that neuroma. And that's usually what starts the fireworks. Sometimes people have neuromas. They're walking around with the neuromas. Oh, my tongue's getting tied. They're walking around with neuromas. They don't even know they have them. Why? Because the prosthesis isn't pushing into those areas, right? And it's all fine, okay? It's typically when the prosthesis starts pushing into a certain area where there's a neuroma and it gets hot and bothered, and that's usually what starts things off, okay? And the person, usually what I'll do is I'll take my thumb and then I'll kind of poke it into that area where they say that they're feeling the neuroma pain. And if their pain lights up, then that's usually an indication to me that we need to go refer them back to the doctor to see if it's a neuroma or if it's a bone spur, and just see what they've got going on under there. Okay. I know Marianne says, that's where my legs itch, where they aren't. And again, it can be a little tricky, guys. Sometimes, you're feeling that phantom pain that could be triggered by the neuroma. So it's like the chicken egg scenario. And sometimes the phantom pain is not due to neuroma at all. There may not be a neuroma there at all, right? Phantom pain is one of those things that we're still trying to figure out how it works, why it happens, and all that kind of good stuff, okay? But at the very least, there are certain things that can be diagnosed, that can be treated if they're identified properly. All right, guys, I think I've covered all the questions for tonight. These are some really fantastic questions. Guys, as an ask, if you are not already following me on Instagram, please consider doing so. It's under Cosi Talks. And if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, I'm going to be beefing it up a lot this fall after I finish one big project, and I'll be getting back to beefing up my YouTube channel. But in the meantime, I think I have some really nice stuff on my YouTube channel. So show me some love, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And that's my big ask for this evening. All right, guys, as always, thank you so much for letting me be a part of your lives this evening. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat